We'd like to thank the California State Parks and the Anza-Borrego Desert State Park for honoring these courageous Georgia workers, along with my father and others during those eventful days nearly 55 years ago. You know, I was a young boy during the Georgia strike and elections in 1966, but those times hold much meaning for me. It would be the first of many times that my father would be arrested while building the Union. My mother, Helen Chavez, dropped out of high school in the 40s to work full-time in the Georgia fields and packing sheds at the old Sierra Vista Ranch outside of Delano, California. Later, she and other women strikers would come to Borrego Springs to support the local Georgia workers in their campaign. I remember the rear of my father's old Woody station wagon being converted into a makeshift altar by my uncle Richard Chavez. That altar would help draw workers who were being closely watched in the labor camp to come over and say the rosary, participate in mass, get a bite to eat, and speak to union organizers. And I recall many years later how Father Celandini would proudly reminisce how he was the first Catholic priest to be arrested with César Chávez. Borrego Springs was part of a larger statewide organizing and election campaign of the Georgia workers who voted for union representation in 1966. The workers there would eventually win their struggle and be covered by a union contract the following year. That contract, the Union Second, would help establish what would become the UFW as the first enduring union for farm workers in the history of this nation. Today, we celebrate César Chávez Day, but my father knew that there were countless men and women who made tremendous sacrifices and achieved great things, but whose names are largely lost to history. My father gave the poorest of the poor faith and confidence that they could take on one of California's most powerful industries and prevail. Among those were the courageous men and women who toiled in the vineyards of the Georgia Fruit Corporation at Borrego Springs. Today, we honor some of those other heroes. First among them are the panelists, Gilbert Padilla, one of the founders of the UFW who literally helped build the movement by leading strikes and boycotts and negotiations for many years. Like Gilbert and my dad, Bill Chandler was also a veteran of the Community Services Organization and an early leader in the movement, organizing strikes and boycotts. Reverend Chris Hartmeyer also worked with us before there was a union, and he helped make sure that strikes and boycotts succeeded by marshaling face activists to La Causa all across North America. Marcos Munoz was a grape strike leader who was sent to Boston with only a priest's phone number and emptied all of New England of California table grapes, and later did the same thing in Chicago. Union organizers who were sent to help workers organize there in Borrego Springs were kicked out of the local city park, and they ended up staying at the Anza-Borrego Desert State Park. They were later joined by striking workers who were evicted when they went out on strike on June 29, 1966. Later that day, my dad and others were arrested when they attempted to retrieve the workers' belongings at the Georgia labor camp. And then there was the park supervisor of Borrego Springs, Wes Cater, who heroically refused demands from influential locals to kick out the workers from the state park where they went for rest and refuge. The Georgia Fruit Corporation was already infamous by then, having provided John Steinbeck with material that he used to describe the Gregorio Fruit Corporation in The Grapes of Wrath. Borrego Springs is a little-known chapter in a more famous chronicle, but it's the heroic people who took part in these events who should never be forgotten, and we hope that today's observances will help keep their legacy alive. And that's why these interpretive panels honoring the legacy of those who fought nonviolently here at Borrego Springs is especially relevant and much needed today. Thank you all very much, and si se puede.